to make sure I've got everything right.
Well, it is recording, so whenever you're ready, you can get started, but no rush.
Okay, fantastic.
Welcome to Zoom for Government. Enter your meeting ID.
All right. Let me know when you all can see that.
We're good. We can see it.
Great. Well, let's go ahead and get started. So good morning or good afternoon from wherever you're joining us from. My name is Anil Karmel. I'm the co-founder and CEO of RegScale, and excited to talk to you about what we're doing here at RegScale and how we are supporting the implementation of zero trust in government and industry as well, from a governance standpoint. So I'll start with kind of laying a foundation of what RegScale is doing to reimagine compliance, talk about its applicability from a zero trust standpoint, walk through an actual demo of a live use case that's been described in the Zero Trust Lab, and then of course have the opportunity for us to have questions throughout this conversation. So without further ado, I'll dive into, again, what RegScale is, core kind of value propositions, the way we kind of are thinking about compliance, and kind of go from there. So really, RegScale is designed to bring the principles of DevOps to compliance in a discipline that we're calling regulatory operations, or RegOps, allowing organizations to shift compliance left, to start compliant and stay compliant with their compliance obligations. Because the reality is, everyone is trying to transform organizations. Each one of you, whether you're a vendor or you're with the government, you are all on a mission to try and bring innovation into government. But the challenge is compliance is inherently slow. It's done in Word documents, it's done in spreadsheets, and it's instantly out of date the moment that you create these documents. So, when you think through today's compliance challenges, from an internal audit point of view, you've got a nonstop manual copy and paste exercise that you're having to go through to keep your paperwork up to date, done with a limited number of people, with evidence stored all over the place, and your budgets aren't going up to do compliance. They're pretty flat in most organizations. Maybe in some they're going up, but in a lot of cases, compliance is not an area that is an enabler to the business. And then when you scale it up to the CISO, or the VP of Risk and Compliance, depending on where you sit, you've got different artifacts that have to be created for every different regulation. Government, obviously, largely 853, 171 from an RMF perspective. But you've got audits coming at you 15 different directions, and you've got to ensure that you're continuously compliant with your obligations, and your ATO packages are continuously up to date. And when you scale up to the CIO, or that individual line of business within, let's say, a federal agency or a commercial entity, you've got different regions, different locations, different systems of record. It takes a long time to get your technology approved, and nothing is standardized. And as a result, this is what your org looks like the day after an audit is scheduled. People are running all over the place trying to find the latest compliance docs, seeing when they were last updated, and seeing if they actually match the systems as implemented. So, really, when you think through, this problem from the standpoint of security, there's been a push in our industry to shift left security, to try and make security as near real time, continuous, and complete as possible. So we have a lot of investments in tools and technologies like vulnerability scanners or code scanners, or we're investing in cloud security posture management solutions. And then when we find issues, we open up tickets in our ITIL solutions like Jira or ServiceNow to try and address these security issues before they become issues. Or we're shooting emails back and forth with Outlook. But when we think about compliance, we're still doing compliance in Word docs and Excel spreadsheets, stored in file servers and GRC tools like Archer or EMAS, across a multitude of different compliance requirements. So the question we asked ourselves is, how do you shift left compliance? How do you make compliance like security real-time, continuous, and complete? So really the first step on that journey is to digitize your compliance artifacts and get them into a system of record. So this is traditionally where GRCs end and where we begin. And literally RegScale is a collection of APIs. And as a result, we integrate with the existing security tools that a federal agency already owns, take those findings via APIs as mapped to compliance requirements, automate the creation of tickets in your JIRAs or ServiceNows of the world, and we focus on keeping your compliance documentation continuously up to date. So now in a scorecard, you can look at every requirement. You can look at the status of that requirement, whether it's fully, partially, or non-implemented. You can take a look and see the assessment, both manual and automated, because you need both. And you can take a look at the open POAMs or issues for that particular requirement and the compliance score for that control and for the system writ large. And then, there's a lot of different requirements that you have to be able to support, and you have to support and output that in a multitude of different formats. So one of the things that we support out of the box is we're early adopters of the NIST Open Security Controls Assessment Language, or OSCAL standard. And we can output this documentation in OSCAL in every layer of the stack, the 1.0 compliant, the catalog, the profile, the SAP, the SAR, the POAM. And then finally, the ability to scale this environment, scale this offering in your own environment. So we deploy in Boundary in your environment. So it feels like SaaS. It's consumed in a browser, but it runs in your AWS tenant. It runs in your Azure tenant. It runs in your GCP tenant, or on-premise in bare metal if you want. With multiple business units being able to have individual tenants within that deployment to meet their own unique needs. And yet, because RegScale is a collection of APIs, you can have automated reporting in a business intelligence tool of choice like Power BI or Tableau or ClickSense or whatever that BI tool might be, allowing you to shift left security and compliance to start compliant and stay compliant with your regulatory obligations. So this is kind of where we sit. This is obviously not a showing you every different tool that exists out there. So notionally, you can see, replace any of these technologies with, the ones that are within your own agency, or if you're a vendor, an opportunity to integrate with us, because we are a collection of APIs. So our goal is to take the findings from these tools that humans have to go manually see, bring them into our platform for those customers that want that integration, right? Allow you as mapped to compliance requirements, and then automate the creation of those tickets in your JIRAs and ServiceNow. Integrate with the existing compliance systems of record, like your Archers, like your EMASs of the world, like your CSAMs of the world, right? And kind of serve as that API-centric bridge between all of these things, automating the RMF and truly delivering a continuous authority to operate, or CATO. So that's kind of the core value proposition that RegScale brings to the table around continuous compliance automation, with the ability to deploy in, high-sided networks, high-sided environments. So with that, our product portfolio, we have an enterprise edition. We have 3 editions of RegScale. We have all of these different features that are available. We deploy in multiple different environments. We support Windows. We have a turnkey ISO appliance with a CLI to automate compliance in a sidecar, where you can just do a one-line command through the CLI and either ingest OSCAL catalogs or integrate with scanner tools or whatnot. And we also deploy, in containers. We have a full-out Kubernetes cluster if that's desired. And if you don't want to deal with hosting, we also offer what we call a managed edition, where we'll host it for you, dedicated hosting with your own custom SLA, so it feels like SaaS, but it's dedicated for you. And best of all, you can get started for free today. You could download Community Edition completely unrestricted. You could download it, run it in your own environment. It's upgradable to Enterprise Edition. You just come to talk to our sales team. You can purchase a license kit, it'll unlock all the enterprise capabilities, but this is a full-fledged next generation GRC platform for you to get started and reimagine compliance in an API-centric economy. So with that, where did RegScale begin? So by way of background, myself, my fellow co-founder, Travis Howerton, who serves as our Chief Technology Officer, we came out of the NNSA. So we are former federal guys, I came out of Los Alamos myself, built their, led the development of their cloud and collaboration capabilities with a great team, and met my fellow co-founder and CTO, Travis, who came out of Oak Ridge and Y12. We served as the CTOs of the weapons program, and really we're signing off on these different SSPs to run systems in government going, there's got to be a better way. So founded a company called C2 Labs, which exists today as a digital transformation partner for regulated industries, developed the technology coming up almost 5 years ago which was originally called Atlasity, to really change this conversation around how compliance is done. Soft launched it in February of this past year, closed around a capital, and spun that technology out with the core team and the IP as the company you see here today, RegScale. And these are just some of our enterprise customers that are paying to use the software in their own deployments and environments across federal agencies as well as large government contractors to change how compliance is done, and really deliver that automated RMF to automate the CMMC, for example, and also build 853 security plans. So, with that, I want to talk to you kind of how does RegScale fit when we think about zero trust and the zero trust capability model. So borrowed this from an earlier kind of prezo that talked about kind of that overall zero trust capability model. A lot of vendors have been really kind of focused on each one of these 4 pillars of the zero trust capability model. We focus on that bottom part, right, where it's all about the governance, because you can have great technology, but if you can't validate that technology is actually working as designed or as imagined, you got to move away from compliance as imagined to compliance as implemented. And that's where RegScale comes in, is we help you move the needle from, hey, this is how I think it's supposed to be built and it's working this way, to this is actually how it's working. And actually being that governance layer to be able to show you trending over time from a compliance standpoint and be able to capture and document compliance against different regulations. So with that, I'm going to walk you through a demo of RegScale. So, we built a zero trust project in RegScale for OMB 022M. So I'll talk a little bit about that. That's a presidential directive that came out of OMB. Show you how you can manage that in RegScale, how you can meet the requirements, how you can conduct assessments, both manually and automated, how you can visualize your risk and compliance, be able to auto-generate the artifacts for the auditors, and then scale up with real-time reporting and analytics. So I'm going to pause right here for a moment and answer any questions, at least in what is RegScale, kind of where do we fit, before we jump into an actual demo of the software and the use case here. All right. There are no questions. Feel free to jump in and ask a question if there is one. Otherwise, I am going to, I'll do my best to make the screen bigger. I'm actually going to share on a different screen, so that may actually solve the problem. I am sharing here on a bigger screen. So let me see, let me know if this, that helped. I'm going to say silence is a yes. So I'm presuming that you all can see that.
Yes,
okay.
We can see it.
All right, very good. So I'm going to start with the homepage of RegScale. So this is out of our demo tenant. This is running in Azure right now, running orchestrated by Kubernetes. So it is a cloud native deployment. Of course, this you can deploy anywhere. Like I said, we can run in Windows, we can run as an ISO appliance, we can run as a Windows IIS installation, cloud auto scaling groups in containers and with Kuber. So multiple ways in which we can deploy. So so you can see here's a homepage of RegScale. I'm looking up because I'm actually looking at another monitor here. So you can see all your assessments kind of at a glance. You have the ability to dive into any one of these, and you'll see kind of all the different things that are in the system, right? So you can see, your components, your assets, your data calls, exceptions, issues. There's something like 20 different modules within RegScale, all tightly coupled and interconnected. So you can tie, for example, 853 controls to risks and issues, and really have a robust way to manage governance in your system. So I'm actually going to dive into our projects and created a implement zero trust for DOE, since we're former NSA DOE guys. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this. So this is a project that we created around a specific requirements. This is OMB memo 022M, moving the US government towards zero trust cybersecurity principles. So really, we're going to be leveraging RegScale here to track policies, to track related assessments, to keep those architectural drawings in one place, to gather evidence, to track issues and performance improvement, and really kind of be this single source of the truth for governance, risk, and compliance for implementing zero trust principles throughout this particular agency. So you can see the phase, plan, start, and finish, the budget, the actual cost to date, the drivers for this particular project, and then the percentage complete. So each one of these projects have requirements. So you can see here's each one of the requirements that came out of that OMB memo. You can see who owns those requirements, the status of those requirements, when it was last assessed, and the assessment result, and you can visualize this in any which way. So we have rich visualizations throughout each module of the system, and the different assessment results. So I'm just going to go into one of those requirements. We give you this wizard, kind of a next finish, to be able to step through each one of these requirements, to implement those requirements, define the requirements, and then assess the requirements. So you can see here, DOE will implement X technologies to ensure data is encrypted at rest. Actually, go back to the regulation. So regulation is agencies must audit access to any data encrypted at rest in commercial cloud infrastructure. So you can see this EO directs agencies encryption to protect data at rest. So you can see the description of that. You can see the family and the weight. You can define the implementation. So I just mentioned that DOE is going to implement these technologies. And we're going to use a CSPM platform, or a cloud security posture management platform, to monitor CSPs and ensure encryption at rest is enforced. So this is using an automated monitoring vehicle to go monitor that. And then the assessment plan is the CSPM will be integrated with RegScale to automatically log issues if encryption at rest is disabled. So you can see the requirement owner, the status, and then the assessment. So the assessment is valid encryption at rest is in place. So you can do assessments one of two ways. You can do assessments manually, and we do this as what we call lightning assessments. And if there's any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, and I will have time at the end to answer questions. So you can just simply watch the score up here. You can pass, partially pass, fail, or fail the assessment. And you can have multiple test criteria here. Enter your notes as an assessor in the notes comment, and you can click complete lightning assessment. I'm going to show you what a completed assessment looks like against this control. So here's a completed assessment. So you can see here's the assessment. I'm going to click on the you can see who's the assessor, the type of assessment. This was an internal audit. The assessment plan, the assessment report that encryption at rest is in place, the plan start, the plan finish, and the actual finish. And I have the ability to load evidence directly in the system as proof in terms of evidence collections. So fully AES 256 encrypted with an MD5 hash stored within your application. So, and then we also give you a robust history to show, whenever this record was touched, who touched it, when and why. So I showed you kind of a manual way that you would do one of those assessments, but really the power of a solution is through integration. So we have a robust integration platform where you can define your automation IDs. You can actually extend the schema, but literally everything you see here in RegScale is a collection of APIs. So this actually is RegScale. So what you saw is the GUI that sits on top of RegScale. But the actual, what is RegScale? It's actually this. It's actually this collection of APIs. So I'm going to actually authorize this API with my bearer token. So I'm going to go into my profile. I'm going to grab my bearer token. I'm going to go into the API and authorize it. I've authorized the API with my credentials. And I'm going to go in and just retrieve the total number of assessments within this particular tenant. I'm going to go ahead and try it out. I'm going to execute it. And you can see here's the curl command that would run that you'd include in your Python script or Bash script or whatever you want to use. your scripting language of choice, and you can see there's 55 assessments within this particular tenant. So this is how you are able to push and pull compliance information between the system. So I'll give you an example of an automation. So this is a technology called Wiz. Wiz is a cloud security posture management tool. You can use any tool. We just happen to have an integration with Wiz. They're a fast-growing cybersecurity cloud security posture management tool. So this is actually pointed at our own RegScale tenant. So this is looking at the tenant that you're looking at. So you can see the issues that are automatically logged here. You can see what the top patch management issues and the vulnerability issues. So what we're showing you now is how do you bring those issues that a tool has into RegScale. So I'm going to go flip over into the issues or POAMs module, and you can see here's all the different issues. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up one of these issues. These issues were brought in via the API. This is actually using our CLI, which runs as a sidecar container right next to RegScale. So you can actually just one command run this as a scheduled job in our CLI and bring these in programmatically. Or you can just have a script library running Python scripts as a sidecar. Either way, so you can either use our native CLI or you can use some sort of sidecar to do that. So you can see, here's the Wiz control ID, the severity, when it was seen, when it was last seen, and then, here's kind of the key. That particular finding is mapped to compliance requirements. So you could see here the list of those different compliance requirements and the control ID mappings. And this is how you would then automate the tick and tie of this particular Wiz ID to, for example, a Jira ticket or a ServiceNow ticket, and you'd have the ability to automate the creation via RegScale itself of opening tickets in your Jira instance or in your ServiceNow instance. And you can, use any kind of scanner, whether it be Prisma or Qualys or Tenable or, whatever your vuln scanner is, or Wiz or, whatnot. So it's kind of a bring your own kind of scanning tool, plug it in. We've got several plugged in out of the box, as you can see. And then the ability, we've kind of modeled what FedRAMP has done from a POAM standpoint. So you can define what the asset identifiers are. And of course, you have the ability to bring in assets. Was it a known exploit vulnerability? Is it a false positive? Is it an operational requirement? Is it auto-approved? Are there vendor dependencies? Be able to do a full risk analysis and be able to manage risk and how that risk trends over time, all within RegScale. So this is really bringing governance from an automated standpoint to life in a platform and really saying, have you implemented zero trust? And if so, show me. And that's what RegScale is designed to do. So I'm going to go back into that project. I'm going to show you a couple more requirements. So I'm going to go here real quick into this next requirement, right? So you can see, here's a requirement. Agencies must create reliable asset inventories through participation in CISS's CDM program. So you can see, here's the requirement. You can see the implementation here, and status is fully implemented. You can see this failed, right? We're not actually doing it. So you could show which assessments pass, which assessments fail, all within the platform. So I'm gonna just check to see if I have one of these that actually has a project tied to it. This one. So agencies must develop a zero trust architecture plan that describes the approach to environmental isolation in consultation with CISSP, submitted to OMB as part of their zero trust implementation plan. So you can see here's the description, right? You got to have a ZTA architecture. So you got to develop that architecture, but that's something that's planned. So what we do in RegScale is we give you the ability to have kind of a project management capability through Kanban boards. So what you're traditionally used to, you can establish different tasks that are assigned to different people. This is automatically pushed out to your Slack and Teams as well. So
hey, Steve, how's it been going?
No, sorry. I think I heard some crosstalk here. So as you can see, these individual projects, you just define, what's assigned to whom. As you can see, establish a ZTA working group that can jump into one of these. You can see who's assigned to, the status, the level of effort, the percentage complete, and you can address and add any files directly into that, have social conversations around it, tie links to different systems, all kind of within that particular task. This allows you to kind of manage your tasks as tied to particular issues or tied to a requirement, all within the same tool, and then be able to visualize it in any way that makes sense to you. So you can even look at it in a table view if that's of interest. So, really, this is kind of, the ability to, and of course, I'll see the history of who touched all these different records and viewed and updated it. One of the things we do also is we give you kind of the ability to visualize all of this in unique ways. We give you kind of the scorecard view where you can look at the compliance score of this overall project, the total number of requirements, the total number of assessments, the number of open issues. So I showed you there's 2 issues, one passed, one failed, the status of all your different requirements, the last assessment result, who the owner is of these different requirements, when of these assessments actually finished, the issues by date identified with a baseball card by requirement, when it was last assessed, compliance score by requirement, and you have the ability to dive into each one of these or conduct a lightning assessment right here at the scorecard view if you're an assessor. You can also look at that in a tabular view where you see every requirement, status of that requirement, fully, partially, or not implemented, the last assessment, both manual and automated, because you need both. The total number of assessments that have run, the open issues or POAMs against that particular requirement, and then the compliance score for this control and for the system writ large. And then last, a lot of people like to have a Gantt chart of all their different issues. So like, here's the different issues. We had 2 issues that were recorded. So you can see, here's those issues kind of in a Gantt chart view. So, this is showing you kind of the way that you can manage governance for, a particular set of requirements. In this particular case, this is a particular OMB memo. This is not limited to what RegScale can do. This is just one specific scenario and use case of kind of how to employ governance for zero trust in a federal agency. Of course, you can tie data 153, you can build 853 SSPs in here, you can automate the RMF, all those things are possible, but wanted to just narrow the focus to this particular use case. So with that, that kind of is in a nutshell of what RegScale is, how it works, and I would be happy to open it up to any questions you might have. Okay, so I see a question in the chat. 1 second, making it bigger on my end. So how do the verifications work? So I'll read the question in the chat. So is it just by comparing templated controls? You need something that's going to go check. So it's not just about implementing the template, it's the deviations from the template. So you need some sort of scanner to go, and great question, Richard. You need some sort of scanner to go say, okay, let's say you deployed a workload and you had encryption at rest enabled, and then somebody changed it because systems change. You need some sort of tool that will monitor for those changes. I used Wiz as an example as a cloud security posture management tool. You could use, any tool. And then when it finds, hey, this changed, that's when it goes and logs it in RegScale via that API or the CLI integration to say, hey, this control is no longer compliant. Here's an issue. It's automatically created in your Jira or ServiceNow instance for somebody to go work on. Instead of waiting for an assessor to come in, schedule an assessment, here comes in the audit. We're going to go take a look at that control live in real time and realize it's been off. How long has it been off? Who knows, right? And now you've got a massive finding. So this allows you to start compliant and stay compliant with your obligations by leveraging the tools that you already own and maybe some more. To really drive continuous compliance. So hopefully I answered your question there, Richard. Christine, what's a risk score consist of? So is it based off of compliance status? So great question. So the risk score is based off of a number of different variables. Let's see if it actually shows me the calculation here somewhere. There was a little help, but basically it's based off the weight that you assign to each one of these controls. So one of the things that a lot of tools do is they black box what that score actually kind of means. So what we do is we give you the ability to assign your own weight so that, let's say a particular requirement, if you were to fail that requirement, had a greater impact to your overall compliance score than another requirement, that would be reflected in your compliance score for the entire tool. So we give you the ability to dynamically design what weights mean to you. We also import that as part of the catalog. So for example, for 800-171, those assessment objectives, we bring those in, we have specific weights that can be assigned. They're already defined, you can change them of course, but that's all kind of available to you to provide transparency of what that score looks like, A. B, the other thing we do is kind of risk trending over time. So like if we go into the risk module, I'm gonna see if we have anything in this one. I'll open this just to see if there's any in there. So you can kind of see risk trending. So as you define risk, you can see whether the risk is going up or down over time. You can look at risk through a variety of different lenses, from a business risk or operational risk, defining your own risk, what controls mitigate that risk, and be able to view the consequences of severity and residual risk, tying risks to requirements. So it's like I said, it's a many-to-many system. So you're managing compliance holistically, not just are you meeting the requirement or not, but you're also documenting your POAMs, you're documenting your risks, you're trending risks over time, and being able to manage your program in a holistic way. And then I'll end on one more thing. If you don't like any of the visualizations that you see here and you're like, you know what? I wish it could do something more, something custom. I mentioned RegScale is a collection of APIs. You can literally visualize it in any BI tool of choice. So this is Power BI looking at a different RegScale tenant, a demo tenant, showing you like holistically, here's all your facilities, here's all your assessments, all your issues, all your overdue risk, all your causal analysis. You can look at your risk holistically, pulling at the same API. Per year, your strategy, owner status, the risk flow, for example, right, by date created, the residual risk and consequence, showing you the power of an API-centric compliance automation platform. So I know it was a long answer to your question, but it was a big question. So hopefully that answered it.
Awesome. Are there any other questions? Ooh.
For follow-up, how would I generate or receive a token for any client that calls your API? So good question. So back to here. So kind of two ways. So you can use your own credentials. So there's a bearer token right here from your credentials of the user that has, and it uses the same privileges that you have from a user standpoint, but it's time bound, right? Because it's only good for 24 hours. So obviously it doesn't work for systems that are, calling things on a routine basis. So what we do is we allow you to create service accounts. So these are personal access tokens for service accounts. So this allows you to create a bearer token that supports automation use cases. So you would do that in our service accounts tenant as part of or configuration. Just create that and you plug that in from an API standpoint. Awesome. Great question. Christine, OSCAL leverage. How's that? RegScale uses OSCAL to assess or set the bounds of baseline security controls. So I'll actually take a step higher than that. So OSCAL isn't necessarily designed to set the bounds per se. It's more a schema that is designed to express control definitions, to express security assessments in a machine readable format. So OSCAL doesn't necessarily create the boundary per se. You as a system owner define the boundary. What RegScale does is serve as an intermediary between the human and the machine to allow you to output documentation in OSCAL. So I'll show you an example of that. So I'll go into a security plan. I'll bring up a different plan. I'll bring up a RegScale CMMC level 1 information system security plan. I'm actually going to show you through it this lens. So this is an ISSP. So we like baseball cards and we're government people, so we like acronyms. So RegScale's cybersecurity maturity model certification, level 1 information system security plans. See the percent compliance, you can see the status fully, partially not implemented, the assessments pass, partially pass, fail. So you as a system owner define the controls, you define your assessments, right? So what OSCAL allows you to do is take all of that work that you've done here as a human and output that for a machine to process. So we allow you to click this export button, and you can download either a RegScale JSON file or you can download an RegScale file. So the cool thing about the RegScale files, it's already validated when you click this button using the same validator NIST uses. It uses AJV validation. So if you haven't filled out everything and it's not RegScale compliant, it will pop up warnings here before you actually export it. And now you've got an RegScale compliant JSON package that you can use and send off to requisite tools or people to do great things with. So hopefully that answered your question. Oh, A, and B, let me add one more thing. One of the things we've done in RegScale is we've created this new thing. To it, where is it? Resources, documentation, created the CLI, right? So we just rolled out RegScale CLI. So now you can actually ingest in a single command line an RegScale catalog. Just download RegScale. You'd have to have an enterprise license for the CLI. And you can actually ingest catalog. And there's a whole lot more we're going to be doing here with RegScale, but this is a command line way to bring in JSON objects into RegScale. So I know it was a much bigger answer than what you asked, but RegScale's a big question. Any other questions?
Any other questions? Going once, going twice. Awesome. Well, I'm going to stop recording.